All right, Mason, you pick.
Go for it.
All right. Originally, I was going to talk about satellite teams. You ran a team, and Star, I think originally was a satellite team, and then they got the factory effort from Yamaha. The way that a lot of these other teams are trending up that are satellite teams, is it possible we get like an era where the freedom of having a satellite team is actually an advantage over what some of the other, like a team like Factory Honda is right now?
Yeah, Mason, great question. And I would love to hear Chris and Steve's thoughts on this. I feel in this day and age, with how well that the OE bikes, the bikes are just stock, that certainly helps teams, B teams and C teams. And I feel like there's less influence from the Japanese than there once was. I feel like there's really good aftermarket companies, from suspension to engine. So to your point, I feel like we are at a time, yes, where it's not that bad to be, a satellite team. I really truly believe that. I mean, when we had RCH, there were times, we were doing most of our own development. And I feel as though this is if you have a manufacturer that is pushing the envelope and you have a lot of support, I feel like that's an added bonus for sure. But the nice thing about the satellite teams is when you're not governed by the factory, you can go out and try the best things. And there are good aftermarket products out there. So that's the beauty of it. It's just finding that right balance, in my opinion. Chris and Steve, what do you think?
Well, there's no doubt that Star got better with less factory Yamaha interference, right? Mm-hmm. One of the reasons was they were letting John and Eli and Gilmore try anything they wanted, right? So I think that's a good point. But I also think I also lean like, so what you need to do is, maybe, I don't know, RC, if you guys had this at RCH, but to me, and I've seen it being on a couple factory teams, there's nothing more valuable than calling the guy in Austria or Japan who designed the frames and finding out stress points and weak points and thickness and knowing what to do. And if you're a satellite team, you can't necessarily do that. But if you're a factory team, you can. But maybe RCH, maybe you guys had a good enough relationship with Suzuki where you could do that, right?
Yeah, we did. I think, obviously we were plugged in, But we had freedom to do what we wanted and try things that we wanted, per Japan's approval. So yes, and then obviously I think my relationship with Suzuki and my past with Suzuki, I was able to call the decision makers and ask for requests and when we needed to get stuff done. So that's a great point. I didn't really think about that.
Also remember when? Sorry, Chris, but Kenny, so Kenny went from Showa to KYB at RCH, and the factory team would not have been able to do that because the Suzuki came stock with Showas. Yep. And to me, it's ridiculous. But there's an example of like an RCA satellite team being like, you know what? Our rider wants to try KYBs. Let's do it. So there's the benefit of a satellite team. A factory team is not letting you do that for the most part.
For me, I haven't been a part of a lot of race teams, right? But I work with a lot with the production side of things since I was in the early 2000s. And for me, I'm a firm believer you're only as good as the people that surround you, right? So some of the best ideas and parts that arrive on these bikes are from people within the team that you're in. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the Japanese or the factory or Austrian or whatever team you're on or the factory. I think some of these teams have great people around them, and you need to have guys that are very smart, but also the ego has to be really down, right? And I think that's why RCH worked really good, because you have RC, which has been at a high level, is a very smart IQ with dirt bikes, but also his ego is not going to bite him in the ass when he's within the team. If someone has a better idea or if it works, he's not going to sit there and say, no, I don't want that. We're going to go my way. So I think that has a lot to do with having successes within satellite teams, is the people within those teams. Star is a great example of this. They were being successful before they got the factory effort. and that is because of the people around them.
Yep.
That's a really great point. Yeah, you are only as good as the people that you have surrounding you. And it's funny. It's like, I mean, you talk about kids. I mean, Kiefer, myself, like I tell my kids, listen, if you want to be winners, hang out with winners, because your chances of being successful are probably going to be a lot greater than if you're not hanging out with people that are successful. And the same with the race team. Same with any kind of sports team, anything in life. If you have a business, like I got a great friend that owns a plumbing company here in town, and I'm like, did you send me the A crew today, or did you send me the B crew today? I mean, his company is riding on his employees, and it's the same as Chris. To your point, it's the same as the manufacturers. It's the same as whether you're Pro Circuit, whether you're FMF, whether you're Star Yamaha. It doesn't matter. You are only as good as the people that you have, and absolutely, you talk about ego. You can't always think that your way is the right way. What I think is that he's like, hey, this worked for me when I had the feeling that you're feeling. You can try it. Might not work for you, but it worked for me. Just give it a whirl. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, dude, you ain't hurt me. You're the dude riding the damn thing. If it didn't work, I'm just trying to help you get the feel that you want to get. If you need to, if you need to widen the fork lugs, if you need to thin the fork lugs out or whatever, like do it. Go for it.
So, Mason, good question. Do you have a bike, Mason? Do you
got a bike?
Got a bike, Mason?